This on? Good afternoon. We're getting close, aren't we? I'd like to start by introducing you to one of my heroes. The young man on the left is my son, Finn. He is about 6.5 in this photo. This was the beginning of a lot of difficult time in our family's life and the path that led me to be standing here right here today. This is him a year later. Finn has always had sensory issues, he's had aggression issues, he's always experienced these things. We spent a lot of time trying to get to this. At this time, he had just been diagnosed with severe OCD, possible ADHD, severe SPD issues, as well as possible PPD issues, or as I pretty much summed it up, WTF. It was just, we didn't know what was going on. A few weeks after this photo was taken, he had gotten to a point where he completely barricaded himself into his room, would not leave, was threatening to harm himself, harm others. We took the extreme step of choosing to hospitalize him to get him the treatment he needed. It was a pretty severe point in our life, our position as a family, and got me thinking a lot about why what we could be doing. So at my company, Substance, we have a philosophy saying we should always do better. And thinking in my role as owner of a company that provides creative technology solutions, what could I be doing to help other families through this, to help them not even get to where we got to? We can do better and we should. I was at South by Southwest in March, probably the nation's premier technology conference, 600 plus panels and presentations. There was one conversation on accessibility, there was 0 on disability. How can we bring about effective change if we aren't even having a conversation around this? We are the leading people in the technology space, and we aren't even talking about any of this. So as I began to go through this process, I turned to technology. I wanted to find solutions and find tools that might help me in this. And there's actually some really good applications out there and some really good tools in the communication space. There's some good things happening out there. Fortunately or unfortunately, communication was not our issue. Finn will talk your ear off. He is incredibly conversational and voracious, and he will just charm the entire room. He loves an audience. Communication was not our problem, but there was nothing else. Nothing else existed out there that could help ourselves. So I began on this process saying, what could we do? What could we be doing to help solve this? And with my team at Substance, I began to look at a couple primary issues, some core challenges that we could be addressing to build upon a technology platform. And basically, we said we can't answer we can't provide solutions until we have the answers. So I wanted to begin with the answers, or the questions, I'm sorry. What are we trying to solve? And I look at 3 primary goals that we're trying to accomplish. The first is early identification and intervention. The second is 360-degree support. And the third is documentation and communication. I love that shot. So in our experience, the educators that were working with Finn, people in the classroom and in his school, they were on the front lines. And they actually the ones that came to us months before any medical professional said, hey, you really should be looking at this anxiety component. We think this may be part of the issue. Educators see this every day, and they have the opportunity to provide this insight and provide this early identification so that we can begin to intervene. And I know how overtasked you are, and I know how busy they are. The goal is not to say, solve the problem, but you see that every day, and you have that insight that we as parents may not see, or we may be blinded to, or we don't have the doctors, we have the capacity. So one of the things we're looking at is there a way to provide this quasi-anonymous system where students can be identified and say, hey, maybe we need to look at this. Maybe we need to have a broader team examine, whether it's a mental health professional, whether it's a nutritionist. What is that solution that can provide. Which is where that idea of that 360-degree support comes in. With my wife, I called it we were one step ahead of the beast. Like I always felt we were finding that next professional who could help us along on our journey at just the right moment. But what if there was a way to have a larger pool, a larger team who can look at this case study and provide insight and provide ways through technology to access this, to review it, provide insight. I work in a technology company. We use a ticketing system where we can track issues as they come through and have this study and have this history that people can provide insight. And it's the idea of that village. Let's provide a global or a larger village that everyone can look into to help provide insight into this. You know, like I say, my wife and I are fairly educated people, but we are completely unaware of so much of the vocabulary and so much of the language around behavioral health issues until just about a year ago. And you know, now, further along, we have a much deeper understanding. We're much different parents than we were a year ago. But having those tools earlier on with a larger pool of resources, I believe would have made a big difference. And finally, this idea of documentation communication. I'll just be honest. Every time we met with a new person, whether it was a therapist, whether it was someone at the school, whether it was a medical professional, you know, just telling the story over and over again was taxing. It was just painful to tell every time. My wife was exhausted. She didn't want to meet with anybody new because we had to start at the beginning. I, like any normal human being, I started a WordPress blog so that I could actually track this and I could document this. When we were traveling and we had a bad day, I could update it on my phone. And it just provided me a sense of providing a record. And I even toyed with the idea, we haven't gone there, but of actually providing an RSS feed to our doctor so that he could actually passively see what's going on. Something that may not have been, you know, that's not worth emailing him. He could actually look at it and say, hey, you know what, maybe we need to take a look at this. So the idea of that providing that information in a passive way, of outbound way, so that these people in that 360-degree support circle can consume it as they need to and as they're able to, and also provide insight into. Now, I had the capacity, it was very easy for me to set up a WordPress blog because that's what I do. But for many people, you don't have that option. So I don't want to present anything I'm talking about today as some sort of magic solution. You know, these are just tools. These are just steps along a path. But there are some real challenges that we need to be aware of as we're developing tools like this. You know, the first is this idea of misdiagnosis or overdiagnosis. You know, my goal is not to get every child into a system like this, you know, but my goal is to provide families like ours insight into what might be going on. Privacy is critical. You know, this is educational information. This is medical information. You know, it's a lot to keep that in. We need to find a way to keep it anonymous. And you know, it's that idea that we can create a larger system where people can have input, but then keep it, the student, private. And then the last, obviously, is this idea of stigmatization. You know, it was very difficult for me, it was a long leap for me to come to terms with the fact that I have a special needs child. But once I got over that, we have been better parents, and I have been a better support for him by coming to that. But there's still this potential idea of stigmatization, and I want to keep that separate. I want to keep those separate. So I'm not up here today asking you to solve all my problems. We are in the process, actually, at my company of developing this system. We're in very early stage prototype. My goal is to get it to a point where we can begin to provide a prototype to investors and potential people, whether it's grants or other funding, to actually build this. I own a business. I have a bottom line. But I also want to do well by doing good, and this is one step on that way to doing that. But in true open source fashion, I present these ideas to you. I want to start these conversations. I want to connect with people who have this interest. I mean, there's a greater pool of knowledge here, out there, across Twitter. Let's start this conversation now to find ways to how do we use technology to make a difference in people's lives. So this story doesn't have a happy ending because it's not at the end yet. I will say Finn is doing wonderful. We have had the last 8 months have been incredible. We can measure our good times in the matter of days rather than hours. It's been a huge change for us as a family. I wish there was a tool that had gotten us here sooner, but there hasn't been. I hope that I'm able to facilitate, to drive, and to move others to make a tool or series of tools in the world out there that can make lives better for everybody. So I'm David Lowe-Rogstad. I look forward to talking to each and every one of you about what the difference we can make in people's lives. Thank you.